let us bring in CBS News correspondent Robert Berger. He is with us now from Jerusalem. So first off, how was this ceasefire negotiated? Do we know what the terms were and what exactly, it means for both Israelis and Palestinians moving forward?
It was negotiated by Egypt, which always plays the mediator in these things. Egypt geographically has borders with both Israel and Gaza. It's also got good relations with both Israel and Hamas, who don't talk to each other. So we've had several days of indirect talks mediated by the Egyptians. Now, there really aren't any terms. This is simply a ceasefire. Israel didn't want to agree to any of Hamas's demands, such as various things regarding the Al-Aqsa Mosque or certain concessions on Jerusalem. Of course, the Israelis would not agree to that. So simply, they agreed to stop shooting at each other.
So, Robert, the Gaza Strip was already in a very poor region before this latest conflict started. Now there are growing concerns over the devastation, the humanitarian crisis, the crumbling infrastructure left behind. As we say, and as you know, Robert, very well, that, prior to this, Gaza was still a very, very difficult place to live. Water, infrastructure issues plagued that part of the region. So what's going to be done? And I think, Anne-Marie, when we had the former ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, here, he might have mentioned that they would help rebuilding, Israel would help rebuild Gaza. But I know the United States is pledging to do that. But what are you seeing just in the early hours of this ceasefire?
Well, as far as rebuilding Gaza, this is a recurring problem. I think you're going to see the UN, the United States, Qatar, and various countries donate tens of millions of dollars to try and reconstruct Gaza, which is going to take many years. The problem is that a lot of this reconstruction money has been used by Hamas for military purposes. They have a huge, or had, I should say, because the Israelis say they destroyed most of it, a huge tunnel network, which is used for various military purposes, such as trying to infiltrate Israel or being immune from Israeli airstrikes. So that's part of the difficulty here in reconstruction. As you mentioned, Gaza is very poor, and it's also the most densely populated place on Earth. So I think the international community wants to come in and help and try and rebuild. The question is, what's going to happen with a lot of this aid that comes in? Will Hamas again use a lot of it for military purposes, or will you see reconstruction to help the civilian population?
And then, what are the underlying causes to this conflict? And I know that's sort of broad because it goes all the way back. Most recently, we have, this fight over land rights. And often when we cover that fight, it's sort of folded into the larger story. It's a complicated legal battle. Palestinians, say that there are some laws on the books that are unfair to them, that give Jewish people in that area more rights than they have. It's very complicated. But there's that a legal squabble, and then of course there is the dispute over Jerusalem. Is there any movement when it comes to settling kind of the root causes of this latest outburst?
Jerusalem is the focal point of the conflict. It always has been. That's where this war started, at the Mosque of Al-Aqsa, or Temple Mount, which is sacred to both Jews and Muslims. Israel claims Jerusalem as its eternal capital, says it's been the capital of the Jewish people for 3,000 years. Israel doesn't want to compromise on Jerusalem. Now, you have the moderate Palestinians in the West Bank, led by the Palestinian Authority, who say, let's compromise. Let's have East Jerusalem be the capital of a Palestinian state. That's been one of the key points of negotiations when they have taken place over the years, as a two-state solution with East Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine. The Israelis won't go for that. And then you have Hamas and the more militant factions who say Israel doesn't have any rights in Jerusalem and that it doesn't really even have a right to exist. So, but the issue of Jerusalem remains a problem. There are no negotiations right now between Israel and the Palestinian Authority on Palestinian statehood. I think the two-state solution is not really going anywhere. So this is a conflict, and the nature of a conflict is that I think you have rounds of violence and then you have rounds of calm. That's at least how this conflict works. So I think everyone hopes there will now be a period of calm, but as far as resolving the underlying issues, it's really not happening right now.
Robert, what are you hearing from your sources about the role that the United States played in the ceasefire? We know President Biden spoke to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at least 6 times in recent days. A lot of people were looking at President Biden as this first big test, international, diplomatic test of his administration. But it does look like there may have been some more regional brokers involved in this ceasefire. But what do you know?
Well, the U.S. does always play a key role because that's the one voice that Israel will always listen to. So it started out that President Biden took a very moderate approach, saying Israel had the right to defend itself against terrorists firing rockets. And he maintained that stand for about 5 or 6, 7 days. And then the pressure gradually kept rebuilding until on Wednesday, the president, in a call to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, said, look, it's time to end this thing now. And when America says that, I think Israel listens. I think the Israelis didn't want to go immediately into a ceasefire, so it looked like they were taking dictates from America. But the ceasefire, after those strong words from President Biden, the ceasefire came just 2 days later, starting early this morning. So America does play a key role. And by the way, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today thanking President Biden for his strong support.
That's really interesting because, you know, when we heard that President Biden had an expectation of de-escalation, you know, Benjamin Netanyahu's response statement was somewhat defiant. And I remember at the time thinking, well, that's not surprising because he's in a really insecure position politically. And so that brings me to sort of this question. This conflict is erupting during a time of political turmoil among Israelis and Palestinians. So how has this wave of violence impacted Prime Minister Netanyahu as well as the Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas?
You know, it's really interesting, but Netanyahu has been strengthened by this. You know, he was about to lose power. He's been in power for 12 years. He couldn't form a government for the 4th time after elections. And so the president of Israel appointed somebody else to do the job, the opposition leader. And right before this war broke out, it looked like they were going to be able to form a government and Netanyahu was going to be unseated. Then this war came. And Netanyahu has once again proven his security credentials to a large part of the Israeli population, his leadership. He speaks fluent English and is a great spokesman for Israel on the international media, the American media in particular. So I think he's been strengthened by this. I don't believe the opposition will be able to form a government now, which means we'll probably have a 5th inconclusive election in not too long. But Netanyahu, in the meantime, remains in power. As for Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, he has been weakened. First of all, he's 86 years old, and second, so he's losing a little bit of strength, physically, and he's really taken a back seat in all of this. Hamas has emerged as the leader of the Palestinian struggle, if you will, for Jerusalem. Abbas is a moderate and has been willing to negotiate with Israel, but the Israelis haven't really been willing to negotiate with him because Netanyahu's government doesn't want a 2-state solution, which is what Abbas is pushing for. So he's really been pushed into the background, but he still maintains control of the West Bank, and he has tried, even though there's been some rioting in the West Bank, to maintain stability there, but he's been severely weakened as the Palestinian leader and is probably getting somewhat near retirement.
You know, Robert, before we let you go, I guess the question, so I get it, you know, that many Israelis will see Bibi Netanyahu as somebody who has protected them and who has delivered on his promises when it comes to security. But at the end of the day, we got to ask, I mean, will we find ourselves like this in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years? And so, in other words, I think for a lot of people outside of the region who have seen moments like this over and over again, most recently in 2014, what's the end goal here? And specifically, I guess, if Mahmoud Abbas, as you say, is perhaps weakened, they haven't had elections. The Palestinian Authority hasn't had elections, and I don't remember how long. It's been a while since I've been in the region as a reporter myself. So, you know, maybe there's some fresh blood required there. Maybe something needs to happen so that the world doesn't have to witness what we just witnessed over the last 2 weeks.
So basically with this ceasefire, what people hope for is a period of prolonged calm. After the 2014 war, there really were no rocket attacks on Israel for, I would say, 3 or 4 years at least. Then they started to trickle in, and it eventually winds up into full-scale war like this one. But what I think what people are hoping for on the Israeli side, and probably on the Palestinian side too, even Hamas, you know, they want to have time to reconstruct, whether it's their military or civilian infrastructure. But these kind of conflicts are terrible and they wear everyone out. So what you hope for is several years of calm. Longer than that, one has to be skeptical because the players on the ground really haven't changed. Hamas is committed to armed struggle. It doesn't recognize Israel's right to exist. And and Israel, even if they were to negotiate peace with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, it doesn't really include Gaza, which is ruled by Hamas. So I think what everyone's hoping for is a few years of relative calm, and probably that's the best you can hope for.
It's depressing. Robert Berger, thank you very much for your reporting and analysis. We appreciate it as always, my friend. Stay safe.
All right, thank you.